Good afternoon and greetings to our audience in India and overseas. I'm Amit, your host for the webinar, Building India's Battery Supply Chain, Challenges and Opportunities. The webinar is being organized by Informa Markets in association with our knowledge partner, Battery Associates. On behalf of Informa Markets, I take this opportunity of welcoming and introducing our esteemed guests to you. I welcome Mr. 𝐒𝐮𝐢𝐴 Jr., Commercial Counselor, Philippine Trade and Investment Center. Welcome, Mr. Eugene. Mr.
Hi.
𝐒𝐮𝐢𝐳𝐝𝐢, Secretary General, Lithium Association of Zimbabwe. Welcome, Eric. Ms. Phoebe
Thank you.
O'Hara, Energy Storage Lead Analyst, Fast Markets. Welcome, Phoebe. I also welcome Ms. Mehdi Catherine, Secretary General, Indonesia Nickel Miners Association. Welcome, Mehdi. I also take the opportunity of welcoming our knowledge partner and the moderator of the webinar in Dr. Simon, who's also the founder and chair of Battery Associates. Before I hand over the webinar, I request our audience to make use of the Q&A tab on the top right to post questions marking to individual panelists. Looking forward for a great engagement. Dr. Simon, the webinar is all yours.
Thank you so much, Amit, and very excited to be here. Thank you so much for the India Battery Show to having us and have this and leading up to this exciting event in India, where many of us are really excited to come together and discuss these topics even more in detail. But today, I'm really excited to have this fantastic lineup of speakers with me on this panel. So we have quite a few topics we want to cover, and we really want to address some of the opportunities and challenges we're currently seeing in the Indian supply chain. And I think with this kind of lineup of speakers, we have a nice perspective, I hope, on a range of different topics, from mining to materials, etc., from all around the world, really. It's quite a global panel here as well, all bringing together in the context of India to really bring some interesting perspectives from around the world to India, but also around the world, anybody where you might be listening in from today. Brilliant. I think just to kind of set the scene a bit, we want to show like 3 slides to kind of kick it off, just to kind of be like, where are we right now in India? Like, how do we see this? And again, very excited to go in more depth with our speakers. And also, as mentioned by Amit earlier, we want to make this interactive. So please put your questions in the chat so we can also discuss them. We would love to hear from you and really address your concerns, your questions on the challenges and opportunities on building India's battery supply chain. Brilliant. Okay, with this, if you maybe could show, please, the first slide, that would be amazing. Thank you. While we're getting this up, we want to talk a bit about, in the beginning, on the demand side. Like, how do we look at India? And I think one thing which is quite exciting is, again, we see quite a significant demand in India for batteries. You can see here electromobility is to lead India's 2020s battery demand, while battery energy stationary storage dominate by the 2030s. So that's quite interesting, right? So I think we look at a lot of different regions and we see that automotive is usually the big pull in the beginning, but then also we see, of course, stationary to really kind of grow strongly. And I think especially in India, we of course see also the 2-wheeler and it's also the 3-wheeler market being quite tremendous and kind of being a big pull there from the demand side. And we can really forecast quite some significant growth. You can also see here there is still some uncertainty depending on which scenarios you look at. Of course, there's a lot of different scenarios. That's one of them we can look at. But yeah, I think the overall story, though, is that we see a significant demand for batteries in India from these different applications. And again, the 2 major applications being stationary as well as electromobility. India has a fascinating backstory of using stationary to balance the grid as a UPS, as a backup system, a lot of lead-acid batteries, but also we see, of course, lithium-ion really growing quite quickly there as a stationary solution there next to lead-acid, which has been really predominant as a technology for stationary before already. And that's great. So we see a big demand. So we want some batteries. And I think if we look at the next slide, we can also see that the government has, seen that and have understood that, that there's, support which was required. And again, looking at this again a bit from a global perspective, which I think is something quite exciting of this panel today, is that we have seen around the world a range of support schemes to become, being implemented. including the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States, but also in Europe. We have different incentive scheme, and then of course in Asia and China, many other regions around the world. But India also has quite some strong policies they want to achieve and some targets. And we have summarized some of them here. And of course, that's not at all exhaustive. It's just a bit of a flavor there. That's what we can see here. So if we look at here, we can see that the Indian government has a range of incentives which are focused on supporting the domestic battery manufacturing, electromobility, and BESS, stationary storage development. We can see here some of the key policy drivers on the left side, including localization of battery value chain, the growing domestic manufacturing capability and energy independence, and also improvement of air quality. And again, some of the policy targets there, some numbers to it. What we have seen is to create 50 gigawatt hours of domestic cell production by 2030. Also 30% of the four-wheeler passenger vehicles and 80% of the two and three-wheelers to be EVs by 2030. And there's a couple of different and interesting schemes here on there, maybe just to highlight some. I think the FAME one is quite an interesting one. We can see here, which has really been focused on the two and three wheelers to really support that. I think, again, it's kind of been running out in March. It was extended a bit to July. There's the second version, the third version we're expecting, potentially to come later this year. So I think that's really, very dynamic right now. And some of you in the call, I know you are from government, different organizations. You're probably quite involved in these topics right now. So very excited to hear more from you as well in the conversations, if you can, in the chat or also in person at the India Battery Show in person when we're there. Also, other, I think, interesting developments we have seen is, for example, the production-linked incentive, PLI scheme for advanced chemistry cell, ACC, battery manufacturing, which came in May 2021, which is designed to enhance the country's domestic battery manufacturing capabilities. It comes with a substantial budget of 18,100 crore, approximately $2.2 billion to be distributed over 5 years. Another one, which is also interesting, which is more on the BESS side. Again, from the previous demand side, we have seen that stationary as well as two and three wheelers are two of the main demand areas. So this one other support here has been focused more on BESS, on stationary storage, and that's the viability gap funding, VGF scheme, which again is focused on BESS, and which is quite interesting because it covers 40% of the initial capital expenditure, which really helps to make these projects more financially viable. So there's, I think, quite some interesting, significant support on the stationary side as well. And again, there's many more. We don't have time to address them all now, but hopefully some more in the conversations later and also in the Q&A. I think another one just to highlight is also looking at the topic of critical minerals. And that's something also going to pass on quickly to Phoebe in a moment, because we also have seen interesting developments on policies for critical minerals, which is in line with lots of other policies we have seen around the world. There's been about 20 blocks which are, kind of like earmarked right now for these exploration for critical minerals, including lithium, cobalt, and nickel. And of course, there's also other overseas interests with Cargill and others there as well. So a lot of exciting developments, and we can discuss kind of how we maybe also have seen other developments around the world, which might be relevant also to this audience from today. And with this, I would love to pass on to Phoebe to give us her perspective, especially from a material perspective there as well.
Thank you, Simon. Great to be here and great to meet you all. Yeah, I'm from Fast Markets. We're predominantly a price reporting agency, and therefore we have really great exposure across all of the battery raw materials, particularly given we have a benchmark in lithium pricing. So what I wanted to do is just to land us in the conversation on India, thinking about what Simon spoke to there, huge policy incentives to try and drive up the battery supply chain domestically. What I think is also important is to have a real gauge as to where India sits in terms of its own critical raw material ability. And if we just look across the slide, what I've included there is 4 of the key battery raw materials in their kind of entirety. And we're looking there at what's the domestic capacity, but also is there any external kind of engagement going on within foreign markets? And what we can see across the board really is that India has very low domestic capabilities in producing their own battery raw materials, to be blunt. Lithium, there was a kind of great media outlay last year when there was an announcement that identification of lithium resources had been made. However, that's going to be in very early stages of development, so it will take quite a long time for that to be pushed into full production. Nickel, we're forecasting that India will contribute 0.2 to 3% of global supply by 2034. So again, a very small percentage of the global outlay of nickel. Graphite, a similar story, 2% of global supply by 2034. And manganese, although the production is great for fertilizers, there's not really much for battery grade. If we're looking externally, and here we're thinking about companies that are operating in the global market based from India, we can see that there are companies such as 𝐁𝐮𝐬 looking for lithium acquisitions in Africa and Latin America. But again, there's not many more looking to acquire lithium resources or deposits externally. And then the only other example is Epsilon Advanced Materials, a great company that's doing a lot in the battery space, and they'll be building their first anode plant in North Carolina, US. So what this slide is trying to demonstrate is, although there's a lot of policy incentives and a lot of great work going into building the battery supply chain, when we think about raw materials, this is really an area where India is going to have to remain quite heavily reliant on foreign suppliers, given that the development of their own raw materials industry is very much in the early stages for batteries. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you so much, Phoebe. And I think you perfectly set the scene for some of our other speakers today, because we just showed there is demand from outside. So what could be better to bring some of these people who already work in that around the world on exploring these critical minerals and share their perspective and share with us what they see is happening in their region. So I would like now to bring in also into the conversation Mehdi, Buster, who's Eugenio, just to bring this up to speed for everyone, and then also Eric. If you could please share a bit about your, the perspective from your respective countries. Maybe you want to share also your countries, and just to remind everyone, and what they're doing right now to develop the mines and processing infrastructure to supply the commodities which are really crucial for this energy transition, and of course batteries in particular. So maybe we can start with Mehdi.
Well, thank you, Simon, and for having me here. I'm so sorry I'm late to join because there is something trouble in here. So I would like to give some perspective regarding for the nickel industry in Indonesia from upstream to downstream. I think if I have a time that I can share my presentation, Simon.
Yes,
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 we can
sure,
do.
Mehdi.
Okay, wait a minute. Yes. Can you see it?
Yes. Go full screen.
Okay. This is us. I would like to introduce myself first. I think everybody already knows about us. We are from Indonesian Nickel Miners Association. And then we're coming from the government 7 years ago. And then a lot of things we are ready to do regarding for the downstreaming program in Indonesia. Exactly since 2020, we already stopped for the export ore. We call it export ban. And then now we got issue coming from the WTO, but behind of the story that we have a success story of nickel downstream in Indonesia. Okay, so I can show you how many nickel processing plant in Indonesia and the capacity, the production, and how Indonesia support for the ecosystem of the batteries coming. So this is us. We are Indonesian Nickel Miners Association since 2017. And then one of the best story of from PNI that we are the one to make it for the nickel ore benchmark price. Maybe you already knows every month we release the nickel ore benchmark price. And then last year's we already released also for the nickel pig iron in Indonesia. And for your information, today in the next 2 hours, we will launch for our MSP price. In the next 2 hours after this event, we will release the MSP price. We will collaborate with another agency in Indonesia. And for the next target, we would like to make it for the Indonesian Metal Exchange. There's a gift for the next government. In October, we already have a new president, and it will become for the next government. There's a lot of programs coming, new programs coming, new regulations coming, but we're trying to prepare for our own program and then to apply for the next government. And one of that, we try to engage with the whole supply chains from upstream to downstream to make it Indonesia Metal Exchange. So, Bismillah, I hope we can make it. And well,
Good.
my
One quick, sorry.
country. Yes.
Sorry, Mehdi, if you please could full screen, that'd be great. And also keep it to the 3 minutes. That'd be perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. I would like to make it faster. I would like to
You could go
show.
full screen, sorry. If you couldn't go to full screen, sorry.
Full screen. Mehdi,
Oh,
sorry.
wait, I'm looking at how to make it the full screen.
Mehdi, bottom of your screen, you'll find the icon. Bottom of your screen, on the right, you'll find the icon.
You get it?
On the right hand side.
Yes.
Yeah,
Perfect.
correct.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay, so I will make faster. So I'm not talking about the nickel only, but yes, everybody knows about our nickel resources and the nickel production in Indonesia. For next, we're coming for the next mineral. Okay, and this is it. And this is it, our critical minerals. We have 47 critical minerals, and not only about the critical minerals, we're already launching about our strategic minerals. You can see we have 22 strategic minerals in Indonesia. Already put it under regulation a few months ago. And then this is our legal framework for the domestic mineral value added, for the export ban. Then this is the whole legal framework for the regulations coming from the value added program downstream. So this is it, our the product export data. Yeah, too many numbers in here. Okay, this is our 5 main export destination country. Of course, China, they are the biggest one. Japan, Dutch, and India, and also South Korea. And like I said, we have a success story about the nickel downstream program in Indonesia. You see the investment realization they're getting from last year, 2022 and 2023, more than $500 million. And then thanks God for the non-tax state revenue. We increase year on year since 2020 until last year, 2023. You see the numbers of the realization of a nickel downstream program. And then this is it, our nickel downstream product export of Indonesia since 2010 until this year, 2024 in July. Okay. Too many numbers in here, but I would like to make it faster. If you're talking about the battery, yes, we are success to make the still on battery cathode, not yet on the battery cell. Okay, I'm talking about the upstream from the nickel ore. We already have the second class nickel, a lot of nickel pig iron, ferronickel, nickel made until stainless steel. And then for the HPAL product, we already have it for the MSP, nickel sulfate, battery cathode. And now how to collaborate with other countries for the lithium one to make the battery cell. But at least we already have one EV manufacturers in Indonesia, like Hyundai. Okay, we collaborate with the South Korea company, Hyundai, not only assembling, but we started to make it the manufacturers EV in Indonesia. For next month, BYD, the BYD from China, they will start it for the groundbreaking for the EV manufacturers in Indonesia. And others company also we started to make a collaboration with in Indonesia to make the battery ecosystem. Thanks God, we success to make the battery story in Indonesia. And what is the impact coming from the nickel downstream in Indonesia? You see, not only talking about the technology and then how to open the job creation in Indonesia, and then how to improve their skill. Indonesia labor, the skill, and then we make it some NGO and we collaboration with another university, and we make like the course and we call it polytechnic and make the institution. Some of them we engage with the China university, and then to improve the skill, talking about the mining processing and for the metallurgy processing. At least this is we're talking about the transfer technology. Yeah, not only from the whole foreigners to make something in Indonesia, but how to improve Indonesia and a citizen to make it something coming from the minerals. Now we have not only about the nickel, but we have a lot of minerals needed to be processing. Okay, and then for the economic value, I cannot say it, about the growth economic impact coming from the downstream in Indonesia. Okay, so many. I will make faster, and then maybe guys can share this presentation to you, and then you would like to read it more detail because there's a lot of numbers in here. If we would like to make it from the upstream and downstream, but I would like to make it faster. This is our nickel output productions coming on this year, 2024, since January until July, coming from the NPI, MSP, and then for the nickel made. You see the numbers, okay? And then talking about the processing in Indonesia, we have two processing in Indonesia. Two typical processing in Indonesia. There is coming from the energy mineral resources permit, and another one coming from industrial ministry permit. Okay, a different typical, but with the same products coming. Okay, and this is our industrial park. You see a lot of, yeah. We already have 19 industrial park, and then I'm talking about the nickel only. Okay, about nickel, I can say we already have 54 company for the nickel processing plant in Indonesia. I don't want to make it. Okay, this is our nickel mining companies. Okay, 380 nickel
54.
mining company.
Tayo too.
Hello. Yes, we already have a 380 nickel mining company, and everybody want to know how much for the RKAB approval, yeah, for the report and budgeting costs from the government side to make a production. This is last update from last week for the RKAB approval for nickel on August, more than 248 million ton. Okay, and how much the demand for from the nickel ore consumption? Okay, this is for the nickel, our distribution of the nickel ore, yeah, coming from the resource and reserve. And well, I would like to offering regarding for the Vale area, Vale, yeah, from Canada company. They have 3 blocks waiting for the new investor to make something for the downstream program. Okay, how much their resources? Sorry, their reserve. Well, you can see the numbers in each area. Okay, on the 3 area in Southeast Sulawesi and Central Sulawesi and South Sulawesi. Okay, this is our nickel
Sorry,
ore
Mehdi,
consumption.
I need you to finish within 30 seconds. Then we have to go to the next one. Sorry.
Yes, this is it. This is more important things to know that for our nickel ore consumption since last 2021 until this year, 2024. You see the number. This year we need more than 260 million ton for nickel ore consumption on domestic only. See, yeah. So this is it, our company, the nickel processing plant from the pyrometallurgy and hydrometallurgy on operating. We already have 49 operating for the pyrometallurgy to make it NPI, ferronickel, and so on. And then for the hydrometallurgy, we already have 5 HPAL company in Indonesia. But in totally, next, we will have 147 nickel processing plant in Indonesia. Oh my God. And I'm worried about our resources. It will be more than 700 million ton for the nickel ore demand. I don't know where we get it. Yeah, but this is it for the nickel success story in Indonesia. So I would like to make it faster. This is for next, but I would like to inform you guys that since last month, Indonesia government already released for the new digital system. We call it Simbera, just released last month, July 23rd. This is talking about controlling and monitoring interconnection from the 5 ministry. Yeah, 5 ministry, from the Energy Mineral Resources Ministry, from the Trade Ministry, from the Transportation Ministry, from Central Bank, from the Trade Ministry, and from the Industrial Ministry. How to control it for the whole supply chains coming from upstream to downstream in Indonesia, at least to reduce for the illegal mining. So this is it for my presentation. I make it faster, but I can share this presentation so you can read it carefully about the data from Indonesia. How to support for the battery, how to support the ecosystem of battery Indonesia. I think Indonesia, we have a key power to make it something from our material. Okay, that's it. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, guys. And I'm so sorry if I speak faster because I only have a limited time. Okay. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you so much. Thanks so much, Mehdi, and great. Thank you for sharing that. And I think gives an interesting perspective of the growth they've seen in Indonesia, which again, I think looking at the materials, what also Phoebe shared earlier, again, I think looking at one of the materials, particularly with nickel, quite an exciting growth story there. So now I would like to quickly pass on to Eric, maybe, to share your perspective, also looking at lithium. Eric, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Hello, guys. For those that don't know, my name is Eric Noza. I'm the Secretary General for the Lithium Association of Zimbabwe. And we are a non-governmental organization more or less working with the artisanal small and medium scale miners within the country to assist in developing an industry. If we look at the lithium story in Zimbabwe, it's still in its very early stages. You more or less have a couple of Chinese players, mainly your 𝐒𝐲𝐢, your Sinomine, and all the likes who are coming in and have purchased. And we've kind of got a existing lithium belt which runs from west to east. Most of the mining activities that are happening are open cast mining, shallow mining. And there's still a lot of exploration that needs to happen. So the success story is not really there yet, and the trickle-down effect within the market doesn't really yet exist, but it is very promising as the government has done a lot of, developed a lot of initiatives to drive the local development.
Thank you so much for sharing this, Eric. And again, exciting, I think, perspective as well, looking at a bit like, I think there's a lot of interest, but I think, as you said, that there's still more growth opportunities. So seeing kind of how this can be developed on and grown in the future. So now I'd love to kind of show to Buster and get us your perspective from the Philippines.
So I'd like to share my so the Philippines is the fifth largest, has the fifth largest nickel reserve in the world. Then we have fifth largest in cobalt reserve. We are more known traditionally for our gold reserves, but now we are focusing also on nickel. We have manganese as well. Okay, sorry. So, okay, can I go back? Sorry. So this is our production of the nickel ore. It's about 29 million metric tons. And then we have mixed nickel cobalt sulfide. So the ore is really 95% of our exports of nickel is in ore. And that mostly goes, 95% of it goes to China. There are 26 mines that is producing it. Then we have 81,000 metric tons of mixed nickel cobalt sulfide from the two Japanese HPAL plants. And 100% of that is done by Sumitomo Mining Corporation. And I understand that Sumitomo sells that mostly to Panasonic, the battery maker. Okay. This is where a map showing where the nickel is being mined and processed. So on number 3 is Zambales, which has 6%. That's in the northern part of the Philippines. In the western part is Palawan. It's here in this island here, it's about 17%. But the most actually here is in the eastern part of the Philippines, in Mindanao, in the Caraga Island, where 76% of nickel production is done. 1 HPAL plant is there, and 13 mines are there. So these are pictures of the HPAL plants in Taganito and Coral Bay. These are owned by Sumitomo Metal Mining Corporation. So in the Philippines, we realized that we have not really developed our nickel mining industry. So recently, we've been passing laws that to speed up the investments, and including an electric vehicle industry development program. But our laws are basically also to see to it that it would be environmentally friendly, it would be sustainable, and but at the same time, it will be foreign investor friendly. Okay, that is for now.
Thanks so much, Buster. We really appreciate that. So I think what we got now is we got some interesting perspectives on 3 different regions around the world. And of course, before we go a bit more also on India and what we can do in India, and what is happening already in India, maybe now to Phoebe to understand a bit of the markets, right? Because of course, a lot of this also connected to price. We've seen a big hype, a lot of developments around the world. Everyone wants to open up a mine suddenly. And of course, what does this connect with? Also pricing and commodity pricing. And maybe Phoebe, if you could share a bit more with us, the commodity pricing cycle. Right now, it seems it's a bit lower right now than it's been before. So maybe what's kind of, maybe disconnected with, and also maybe a bit of a forecast, what you're kind of seeing coming. Is this going to keep going up again? Is it going down? Where are we?
Totally, yeah. It's been a bit of a depressing year, shall we say, for battery raw material prices, actually. If you think about 2022, there was a lot of chaos with massive surges in prices, over 700% in the case of lithium. The story is broadly the same across the board. What we've seen over the last year is a massive investment into mine production and processing, particularly from China. And what that's resulted in is a drastic oversupply across all of the key battery raw materials. This has meant that this year we've seen really deflated prices across lithium, nickel, cobalt, manganese, even copper, despite the most recent rally. And we're expecting at Fast Markets that that's going to remain the case for the next 2 years, simply because that oversupply will take time to feed through. In the case of lithium, we think after that 2 years, prices will pick up, because what we're going to start to see right now is that current investments are actually tapering off because of these low prices. And that means in the future, we will start to see some deficits. So our forecast is that from 2027 onwards with lithium, we're going to start to see those deficits coming to the fore, which could cause prices to rise again. In the case of nickel, Mehdi spoke to it. Indonesia has done an incredible job of bringing a ton of nickel to the market. It's unlikely that that oversupply will get kind of fed through into the battery space. And I think the other thing just to keep an eye on is demand. I think we've all seen in the news, US and Europe particularly, demand really hasn't been where we may have expected it to be. And we're going to have to see some changes that are more structural, such as EV affordability or policy realm stuff, to get that demand a bit more buoyed up in order for prices to rally a bit more.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for this insight, Phoebe. And I think now I would like to go bring it back again to Buster, Eric, and Mehdi, and maybe any of you, if you want to share just really quickly, how have you seen this kind of materialize in your countries? Does it mean there are abandoning mines now? Is things getting delayed? Are people still pushing forward? What is maybe the situation in your respective markets related to this price changes?
Well, Simon, I can see if you're talking about the geopolitics in Indonesia, well, it's not easy to make what is the next perspective. We will come to the new government, so I cannot see any change of the program for the next, but at least like I mentioned before, what next? What next for Indonesia regarding for the mineral processing? Well, I cannot answer right now because, well, this depend on what next for the next government. So but I can see a lot of investors still coming in Indonesia. Not only talking about the nickel, because for the pyrometallurgy we already stopped it. We stopped. You see the numbers that I'm showing you, right? You see the numbers for the nickel processing in Indonesia. So for the hydrometallurgy, we still invited, and also for the end products investor to make a processing in Indonesia, and but for the whole investor, we're waiting. What is the next regulation? Just wait and see. We still have 2 or 3 months coming, and then after that we will have a new government, we will have a new program, and then we will know what kind of the next governments will give it for the next investors. So this is it. Just wait for the next months to make something in Indonesia, but I think that's the best for Indonesia, and how to support, how to collaborate with another country. That's the point, Simon. That's from my perspective.
Any quick thoughts from Eric or Buster?
Yeah, I mean, the Zimbabwe, it's the pricing has really caused a lot of challenges in terms of the production. But you will find what's happening is that you still have a lot of state-owned enterprises, a lot of bigger processing companies in China who really hadn't gotten a foot, so to speak, in the Zimbabwean market. So they're still coming in, and a lot of the local players are actually willing to partner up or dispose of their lithium assets, and they're trying to focus more on more other commodities, the likes of chrome, the likes of copper, the likes of gold. So yeah, you have a lot of new players that are coming in, and they have a bit of a different strategy, whereby the current players had more or less established their operations and their own outrightly their mining sessions. The new guys that are coming in sort of are willing to partner up and support the local players. So they are looking at more of a radial approach, whereby you have 5, 6, 7 good players, and they produce, and then these guys are coming in to maybe set up a concentration plant. Of late, the government has been trying to push for further beneficiation. So there are guys who are willing, but it's going to be a long process. So you'll find that with the depressed pricing, you'll have more newer players, bigger players who are willing to come into the market. And slowly but surely, we're having more interest from the likes of other Asian countries like your Japan, your South Korea, and European players as well from Germany, the likes of Spain. They're also coming into the market. But it's still all early days. And yeah, we'll see what the... yeah, I think as well, saying 2026, 2027, we're obviously going to see some kind of a rebound. So yeah, we'll just wait and see how the market goes.
I go with what Phoebe said, that this market is really a cyclical market. So there are ups and now we're in a down, but Simon already mentioned about the potentials of India as far as the EV market is concerned and for BESS market is concerned. And we are Filipinos, so we are like our Indonesian brethren. We are Asians who are very patient people. So besides, the nickel is still with us. So we think we can. We are confident we can ride this downturn of the market. Thank you.
Much appreciated. And again, I also see quite a few interesting questions coming in, so I want to get to them. So please keep them coming from the audience, and we want to address a few of them at least in the end. So keep pushing them, so we can then ask them as well. I want to go through a few quick questions because now I really want to focus on India, right? So I think it's the point has been here to kind of get some different perspectives and get some learnings from other regions around the world, which we want to share with our audience, and of course all the audience also joining us, particularly from India, relate to the India Battery Show. So maybe you kind of kick this off. Maybe Phoebe, if you could share a bit more about the topic of, how can a country like India secure their supply chain? Because of course we see still today about 70% or so refining plants for commodities crucial to energy transition, including battery manufacturing, are based in China. So how can India, create their supply chain if they want to, or secure it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's doing a great job with policy already. I think the PLI scheme has been revolutionary in a way of bringing investment to the table. If that wasn't happening, I'd say it's going to be a bit difficult. But the government's very willing with policy and incentives to kind of buoy up that investment space. And I think a really great example is the IRA. I know people talk about it all the time, but I think the reason why the IRA is so great is what it's done is it's invested in the states across the different sections of the supply chain. So you've got the upstream, which is a great example. If India does have these reserves and deposits, what can be done there is supporting local mining groups, encouraging them to make JVs and partnerships with global expertise to bring them in and encourage them and allow them to build their own kind of raw material supply chain, similar to what's being done in the States with the likes of 𝐈𝐧𝐝𝐢𝐚'𝐬. I think in the midstream, you've got to invest in your processing. India most likely is going to remain reliant on external resources for the next decade because of how long it takes to build up mine supply. So as a result, what they could use to do in order to kind of shore up some of the domestic supply is build up processing plants domestically. So you buy the material externally and you process it in your own country. That's another great idea in terms of the midstream. In terms of other ideas, you can look to diversify your supply chain by looking to other markets for raw materials. So similar to the US, looking to build relationships with Latin America, Australia, different parts of Europe, Africa. Diversifying that different supply chain is really important to ensure that you're not wholly reliant on one person for your supply. So those are the kind of three key ways that they can go about ensuring they've got a domestic supply chain for raw materials and feeling like they are secure in that supply chain as well.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Phoebe, for this perspective. And now kind of looking again, you know, some of the learnings from these other regions, but it's particular, maybe interesting for India. Maybe if Mehdi, you could share it really quickly, like maybe 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, bit of an example of how did Indonesia manage to get, you know, all of these significant foreign direct investment into the country? How's it done this?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Well, to invite investors, not only talking about the raw material, right? So the government trying to give it a lot of facility, a lot of incentive, a lot of support from the government, past government, yeah, because talking about the next government, I don't know exactly, but I believe that the next government will support and continue the program from the last government, from the past government. So this is it. Not talking about the raw material, how you support the raw material, but how to support with the infrastructures, how to support with the whole facility, and then more interest for the investors are coming in, you know, like the tax holiday, like the tax allowance, like the super deduct tax, and then the whole infrastructures coming from the government. I'm not talking about the whole, yeah, but at least for the general infrastructures coming from the government. So this is the investor trying to engage with Indonesia to make a processing, to make a downstream program. And then how to get the benefit, talking about the benefit, right? As an investor, and then talking about what you will get it and what kind of support it. Not only about how much the material can we make a processing over there, but this is it. Indonesia already make a lot of things, you know, to make a downstream. And then we already have another mineral processing also, like copper. They said that our copper processing plant, we are the biggest one currently. I don't know exactly because I'm not in copper, but I can see the processing plant in copper one is a big one. And also in bauxite, for the bauxite smelters to become the alumina. And also for another mineral, you know, I show you a lot of mineral waiting for the processing, to make a processing in Indonesia. But everything's depend on the geopolitics, you know, the government issue. Not easily, but at least Indonesia government try to engage with another country to make something in Indonesia. I'm not talking about China only, because everybody said, oh, Indonesia controlling by China. But come on, for me, myself, I can say thanks to China. They're the one to make it, and then they're the one to make a success story in Indonesia, and another country trying to make it also like China in Indonesia. So this is it. Everything's dependent on how support coming from the government. But let's see for the next government, what kind of program they will give it to the investor, not only from the foreign direct investment, but also from the domestic investors. This is it.
Thanks so much, Mehdi, for sharing this perspective, how this has been done in Indonesia. Then maybe going quickly to Basler for Philippines. If you could share also a bit about that. I mean, we have seen also quite a bit of investment, I think, especially from the United States in 2023 as well. If you could share maybe a bit about upstream investments there and how to accelerate this developments in the Philippines.
So the first president of the Republic, the Philippine Republic, described our relationship with the United States as this way. So if Europe is United States' sister, the Philippines is her daughter. So we have been under the United States since 1898. So it's there are periods of estrangements, there are periods of reconciliation, but this time, right now, it's because of perhaps of the geopolitics. It's a period of reconciliation or even moving forward. Americans have promised us to help build or strengthen our electronics industry. So that's what they're doing right now. We're increasing our trade ties with the Americans. Of course, there are 4 million Filipinos living in America, so our bonds with America is really quite strong. Now, I think you have a next question. Can I share my slide now on how the Philippines can attract foreign investors? So it would
So let's do it quickly, yeah.
So, okay. So actually, in the Philippines, we are actually encouraging foreign investors to even do the exploration. There is a foreign company can do exploration of the mines. There is a sort of mineral agreement, up to 40% ownership, and then mineral processing. So this one is 100% foreign ownership is allowed. The two HPAL plants of the Japanese are fully owned by the Japanese, or we will allow for the partnership with existing mines. Now, these are just 3 of the existing mines that the mining companies that we have. So you can partner with them. We encourage you to partner with them to set up HPAL plants. Now, here is the incentives that we offer. So for exploration, it's not more than 4 years. And after the income tax holiday of the 4 years, we will provide 5% special corporate income tax. Then the duty exemption for equipment, VAT 0 rating. For the value-added processing of minerals, we can provide up to 7 years income tax holiday. 5%, and after that, it will be a 5% special corporate income tax, and then there are enhanced deductions, which you can add on with the 5% special corporate income tax. And then again, duty exemption on importation of equipment, VAT 0. And this one is for an investment of at least $1 billion. There is the Office of the President can give up to 40 years incentives, up to 8 years of tax holidays, and up to 32 years of 5% special corporate income tax or deductions. We can provide duty exemption on importation of capital equipment, zero VAT rating. So that is how we are trying to attract the foreign investor into our country. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that brings me kind of to the final question. I think, Eric, I want to involve you there then as well. And it's really about, I think, what you kind of been now helping us on a bit, how to enable, if the Indian government or private companies in India like to invest right in your countries to get materials and also, build up these partnerships. I think you showed some great examples there, Buster, for the Philippines. Maybe can you also share a bit more, Eric, what is maybe other topics you have seen if people are interested in, because we know, of course, in Africa, there's a lot of African countries, and in that region, there's a lot of materials available, has been really supporting a lot of the transition from a materials perspective, like what are ways to engage if, for example, Indian stakeholders stakeholders from India would also like to partner with Zimbabwe. Are you muted right now?
Oh, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I think because of the infancy of the market, I think there are about 4 or 5, well, there's 4 or 5 areas that are very important when someone wants to come into Zimbabwe. There is a very big, what can I say, opportunity in terms of the minerals that you can explore, apart from lithium obviously being one of the biggest Obviously, as you know, that Zimbabwe is the largest in Africa and sixth in the world. But the biggest problem that we have here is there isn't a lot of exploration that's happening on the ground. So I think the first thing that needs to happen is a lot of research and feasibility study to kind of thoroughly understand the existing mines and their capacity, whether it's greenfield or whether it's brownfield. And with that being said, it's very important for people to at least establish a local presence. That can either be one or two representatives from their Indian companies coming here and basing themselves here. This is what has actually helped a lot of the Chinese companies become very successful here. The next thing is, maybe to understand the licensing environment and understand the ownership regulation. As you know, Zimbabwe, it changed its law some time back, and you can have 100% ownership rights. There are a lot of incentives for exports. There's a lot of incentives for exploration, but contrasting this, there are a lot of areas that don't have infrastructure. So if you're on the ground, you can kind of understand what is needed in the area, especially areas where there's a lot of activity taking place, where there are people who are willing to offset or dispose of their lithium assets. And the most important thing is to at least ensure that from a regulatory perspective, especially for investments, it's important to first engage with the Zimbabwe Investment Development Authority, which is kind of the mother body for anyone who wants to invest in any of the industries in Zimbabwe. It's very important to kind of understand the background and the licensing requirements, just to protect that capital base that you'll be bringing in. Because as well, I understand a lot of people, when they think of Zimbabwe, they think that the investments will not be protected, but there is a very efficient and well-functioning system that can actually assist investors. And the government has been more or less, maybe the last thing I would say, the government has been pushing a lot for this, for more companies to have the social aspect of their development. So if you're also going to win in terms of the market, you have to have a holistic approach, as compared to what has been happening with the Chinese companies, where they're just coming in and concentrating on developing the mine. What needs to happen now is anyone who wants to come in must look at the wider economic, aspects of the area that they want to actually mine in. So we're looking at roads, we're looking at energy, we're looking at actual infrastructure around that area. And there are a lot of government incentives for that as well. The government is willing to provide government-backed guarantees as long as the the aspects of the development ties together well with the project. So those are a couple of things that people need to consider if they want to come into the Zimbabwean market.
Thanks so much, Eric. Really appreciate it. And then my personal recommendation would be, if you're interested in this, I'm just also in Indonesia, just talk to Mehdi. She probably can send you the right direction, what kind of support there is available. I'm now just going to quickly open up the channel, because there's been many questions. So I'm trying to go through all of them. I already know it's going to be impossible. So I'm already want to highlight, please get in touch with our speakers after if you want to get maybe offline, get some of these questions answered. They're all fantastic people to talk to, so maybe recommend that already. Maybe some of the questions to get through them, maybe start with you, Phoebe. Maybe also here there's a question all about India, the perspective in India. What is already available today? You shared a bit on some materials, but people also asking cathodes, anodes, separators, all of these different things. What could be price points? Who could be supplier in India? If you want to go into this market, do you have any other things you could share on that to kick it off on this question?
Yeah, outside of the raw material space, the battery space is building up really rapidly. So with our gigafactory outlook for India is that it's going to nearly reach the 50 gigawatt hour expectation by 2030, probably not as much. It's difficult to build gigafactories as quickly as people want. So there'll be a lot of advanced local cell manufacturers, which is fantastic. In terms of the CAM space, there's not that much offering at the moment. It's being built up slowly, but again, it requires a lot of kind of foreign expertise and investment. On the anode side, similar story, epsilon carbon materials are the most advanced, but again, there's more investment going into that space. I think the issue with both of these, though, is that China remains the kind of leading investor and producer, and it's really difficult on a cost by cost basis to produce something that's as cost competitive with people who've been doing it for 10 years and have economies of scale. So although there's investment going on, it's going to be difficult for them to build up to a level of competitiveness with China. So the supply chain is building up very rapidly. Another area I would highlight is recycling. A lot going on in India. It's becoming the kind of second most important market for battery recycling outside of China. So in terms of building that circular economy, which is kind of a dream for a market in the battery space, India is doing really well, but I would say very much at the early stages.
Amazing. Really appreciate it, Phoebe. And I think there's also other question looking at the EV demand. Maybe that's something I can quickly add on as we work with a lot of automotive companies around the world. And we definitely see India being quite an interesting market for that. So that's definitely something we're also seeing. So yeah, I think other people are asking about different technologies. I don't think we have enough time on this. Of course, sodium-ion batteries. I know we're going to talk about this also when we are in India at the India Battery Show. So maybe just another plug to this event, because I know sodium-ion is a big topic. Also, if you're interested, go on YouTube. If you look at Battery Associates, we have interesting videos on that there as well, on sodium-ion, what we have seen around the world there as well. There's also other questions, kind of, again, just look at the time. Unfortunately, we cannot get to them, but there's great questions also on Zimbabwe, who can be the customers there from the materials or the existing customers. So I'm sure, I mean, Eric would be an amazing person to talk to about this further. So really recommend you just reaching out to him. And I think it's great. I mean, I think there's a lot of really educated questions. There's also a question, one last one, maybe quickly to Mehdi. Be curious, because people talk also about the topic of anode materials, of course, like the graphites, looking at the coke needle, coke market, and how it's very kind of condensed also in China right now. Is there something, are you aware of any of developments in Indonesia related to that? There's some questions. If you can quickly share, maybe just super quick on that.
Yes, Simon, talking about another material to support for the battery cell. Yeah, I can say Indonesian government trying to engage with another country who own the graphite, like Australia, the Australia company trying to make something in Indonesia, and also from another country. I don't know exactly, but at least for the graphite and lithium, yes, we don't have it. There's a fair from God, I think, yeah. So we have to collaborate with another country. But how to collaborate with them, this depend on what kind of attract and engage with them, and then to make something, But this is it. Indonesia already makes something with Australia, Australia, they offering the graphite, they're offering some lithium, I don't know from where, but at least I know exactly there is some industrial park in Indonesia trying to make a battery cell, and they got the material from another country. Not only from talking about the NMC in Indonesia, but also from the lithium and graphite from another country. I know exactly it will start it. Yeah, it will start it, but they still complete it with the permit or something. And then again, maybe they will finish it end of this year or early next year. But at least I'm so proud to say we will have a battery cell in Indonesia. At least we just started. But for another material, yes, please, not only looking for the nickel. Please look at for another material, another mineral from Indonesia, like bauxite, like copper, like tin. We have a lot of, yeah. Not only focus on nickel, but how about another mineral? So I try to invite another country, another investor to make downstream another mineral in Indonesia. This is it.
Thanks so much, Mehdi. Really appreciate it. And I think, looking at the time, I think we're unfortunately getting to the end of this webinar. What I take away, right? I think it's all about partnerships. I think we think back how we started, right? We see there's an exciting demand in India. And I think in the chat, we can see a lot of enthusiasm for a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of interest, how to make this industry work. We also, with our programs, with our work in India, with the Battery MBA and of other programs we're running, we see a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement in India for the battery industry, which is amazing to see. We also see the use of it, right? We see it in two-wheelers, we see it in stationary, we also see it in EVs. So there is an exciting market for that too. Then from Phoebe we saw the limitation on the current availability of these critical minerals. We need to make this all happen. Which then meant we looked in some other regions, right? We looked at Indonesia, we looked at the Philippines, we looked at Zimbabwe, who are, regions which have a lot of resources available, right? And kind of how they're dealing with that, how they're exploring it, how they have seen some boom, for example, in Indonesia on the nickel, but also in other resources there, but also other resources such as in the Philippines, as well as also Zimbabwe, which are maybe also a bit of in different stages right now in some of the exploration of some of these minerals. We know also we have seen in the policy, which I talked about a bit earlier, that India is quite focused on that. They want to make this happen. They have targets on the 50 gigawatt hours on production, but also they have targets on exploration, getting money on the ground to set up mines, etc., and also have these partnerships which are around the world. And I think that's kind of really maybe the concluding from my side, which gets me really excited to also come to India to attend in person the India Battery Show, including with other people such as Phoebe here on the panel, and hopefully also with Buster and maybe others, and hopefully with many of you before I pass back, because I think it's really important that we have this dialogue, these discussions, that we learn from each other. We see what already has worked in other parts of the world. Maybe some of the projects, you might not want to copy everything. You might want to find your own way, and that's probably a good idea. But I think it's very good that we learn, that we have this dialogue, that we kind of really make this industry a success in India as well as in other regions around the world. So with this, I want to pass it back to Amit to close this webinar. And thank you all again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Simon. In fact, we are almost in the paucity of time with the kind of questions which are coming across from all the audience. So, but unfortunately, what we'll do is that we'll try and pass on these questions to our panelists and to Dr. Simon. And these questions could be answered a little later. And on behalf of Informa Markets, I would like to thank Dr. Simon. Dr. Simon, thank you so much for collating the webinar and bringing out the best. I can't thank enough to our guests for making time to join us and to share their insights. Thank you so much, Mrs. Mehdi Catherine, Mr. Eugene, Mr. Eric Nodza, and Ms. Phoebe O'Hara. Last but not the least, we are thankful to our audience for being part of the webinar and for actively pitching in with questions and insights. I would also like to share a few facets about Informa Markets and the Battery Show. See, Informa Markets is the biggest company in the world in the events and exhibition space. And the Battery Show is an extension of the biggest battery show in the world from US and Europe, and now in India. Our vision to bring the Battery Show to India is to support the Indian industry by bringing the global suppliers to India to fast-track the Indian government's mission and vision of net zero. The Battery Show is scheduled from 3rd to 5th of October, and I'm happy to share that we are a fully sold-out show. Today's forum with Battery Associate was to enhance the feasibility of importing critical minerals to India and support the battery manufacturing ecosystem in India. I extend an invitation to everyone to join us at the Battery Show India, scheduled from 3rd to 5th of October, and be part of the battery tech in India's pledge towards net zero. The details are being flashed on your screens now. Thank you once again. It's your host, Amit, signing off. Thank you so much to our guests, and thank you so much to our host and to all our audience. Thank you so much.